Hi Teaquilters, it's T with Teaquilts, and I am here today to do another video on panel quilts. I am currently working on a quilt on my Saturday sewing chats, but also I wanted to do another quilt top that's dealing with panels, and so I'm going to make another video. But I will also be cutting for the one that's on Saturday too. So this is going to be a dual video. Just wanted to let you all know what we're up to today. So this is my panel, and unfortunately it's hard for me to show because it is a panel and it's so big, but I'll try to lift up my board a little bit. It's pretty big. But it's down at the bottom it says copyright by OCLLO Mason for QT Fabrics, www.qtfabrics.com. This is a digital print, but I did buy it from a store. So I thought my fascination with panels, I have to do something with them or I have to quit buying them. But I went from not liking panels to having about, I'm just going to guess and say about 25 panels. So this is the one that we're going to work with today. Again, as I stated in the intro, I am also working on a panel that's very colorful, floral, bouquet, and it's pretty neat too. So we're gonna get this off of this design board. We're going to go put some starch onto this panel. We're actually going to starch all of our fabrics because we are going to be doing a whole lot of diagonal seams. So when I come back with my fabric starched, I'll show you what I selected, how much you need of each, and what pattern we're working on. So I'm back. I've had a change in my weather conditions, so I was kind of waiting for it to stop thunderstorming, and so I have done most of my cutting for right now, and I do have a couple more pieces I need to cut, and I wanted to wait and cut those with you. So we're going to start at the top though. The Rainbow Poppy Spirit is the name of the quilt pattern that we are using, and I don't know if you're going to be able to read this, especially with me holding it, but let me see if I put it down, tilt the camera up a little, and zoom in, see if that'll work. So it's a pattern that is on eQuilter.com, so you can just go to Google and search Rainbow Poppy Spirit quilt pattern, and it will take you to a direct link there, or the link, or you can use the link here, eQuilter.com/store/pattern.php?q equal 1124. Now, one thing that I do when I download patterns, especially if the person is a company that sells patterns, like a store, and or if it's a fabric manufacturer, I always read the information, double check my cuts to see how much yardage I actually need. Like for the 1.5 yards of butterfly print, I'm using fabrics from my stash, so I wanted to know, based on these cuts, how much do I actually need, and it ended up being 1 1/3 instead of 1 1/2, so just a little bit shorter. I also calculated on the black print, they wanted 2.5 yards, but I wanted to know, without using it for binding and the final border, how much would I need, and that was 1.5 yards. So I do little calculations like that, write notes to myself, highlight certain things in the pattern as I'm working on it. So if you haven't already and you're wanting to do this project, I do advise you to go and download this pattern. So let's talk about the fabrics that I did use. I did opt to continue to use the black here, and that is because, hold on. Let's talk about the fabrics that I'm going to be using. You do need a panel on here, and we're going to come back and talk about the panel last because that's going to be the first thing that I show you how to cut. And you need support, and you need some supporting fabrics, coordinating fabrics to go with your panel. And so I could have used white for this and it would have brightened this quilt up, but I'm trying to go for a low contrast, so I decided to go ahead and stay with the black. I kind of think the black would be very strong, and the white would have softened the quilt a little bit, and that's not necessarily what I want. And I do have some light spots in my panel, and you'll see that as I'm working on it. So I decided to use black for my solid. That's going to be most of the sashing that's already being used in the quilt. On the pattern, they tell you you need butterfly print. Well, I'm pulling things from my stash, and so I have opted to use this print. So you can use any panel that you like, and any fabrics that you already have in your stash that will coordinate with what you have. And we're going to talk about, again, the panel later. And then my final print, you just needed, they recommended 1/2 yards, but in true honesty, you need 12 inches exactly, 13, so you can square up so you're not nervous about it. So I just took from this stone hinge, I just took 13 inches off. Again, I'm not really going to go into like what fabrics I'm using because every panel you'll be using different fabrics, and these fabrics were in my stash for such a long time, so I have no idea if they're even available anymore. So in your cutting instructions, the first thing that they tell you to cut is your panel. And they tell you to cut your panel into a 22.5 by 40.5 inch piece. So I have this panel here, and it's approximately 24 inches. And so when you look at your panel, you don't necessarily have to like center and cut. If I cut off 1.5 inch strip, then I can use that in my string. So I think I'm going to get rid of some of the light area that I really wanted to not have in the first place. So I'm going to be cutting my 1.5 inch off this side once I square up, which means that I may have a strip that's about 1 1/4 that I can actually use in a string quilt when I'm done. So we're going to do that first. So I just fold my quilt in half. I'm going to cut my 22.5 inch piece first. So I'm just going to fold it in half twice, and I'm going to put my far left side, which you can't see, at the 20 line, and then if I need 22.5, I'm going to cut on the 42.5 down this way. So I'll see if I can zoom out a little bit for you guys. And I've got, let's see, I've got a little device on here that holds my cell phone, and I like to keep it attached to my tripod so I don't lose it. So that's what's going on with the black piece. So I'm going to cut on this side, and then I will have to go on the other side of my tripod and cut. So I'm lined up at 20, and I'm just cutting off slither, just barely cutting anything off. And then I like to make sure I check to make sure that I've cut all 4 of the folded layers here, because the last thing you want to do is go to the other end and cut, and you haven't cut through down here and you've got a chunk that's eaten out of your panel. So let me go down and cut the other side. So again, if I'm cutting a 22.5, that means I'm going to be cutting at 42.5 inches here. And so now I have all of this left over that if I had centered, I wouldn't have been able to use anywhere. So I can save this to put in a future project. My scraps are down there. So now the next thing we have to do is cut this now into a 40.5 inch length. And I don't really know how long or how wide this print is. It is a digital print, so make sure that you press this, get it starched really well. I got put starch in it just to help stabilize the digital print. And I'm going to go back to the other side so I can pull this down. I'm going to pull this down. I'm going to cut at 5. Sometimes I don't always cut at 0 just because my 0 line on my mat gets worn so fast. So I just pick other numbers that I can use on my mat. So I'm just lining everything up with the 2-inch line here. It's all sitting on the line exactly the same. Grab my ruler, and now I'm going to cut at 5. And I'm also going to now cut at 45.5. And then I also have another piece that I can use in my strings and crumb quilts. Now I want to answer some questions for things that may happen. What if your panel is not 22.5 inches wide? What do you do then? Well, you can always add additional stripping onto your panel, like adding additional stripping. But in this pattern, you see where they have a strip that's going here. If my panel was, say, 2 inches short, I only had 20 inches, then when I cut this piece, which they tell you to cut 1.5 inches for a 1-inch finish, then I would add another inch so that it would make it the same size when this strip set here is put on. If it's dramatically smaller, you can add blocks. If you don't even have a panel, you can just make a panel with your quilt blocks from a crumb quilt, string blocks that is just 22 by 40.5, 22.5 by 40.5. So you can just make whatever you want. You don't even have to start with the panel. Okay, so now we've cut our panel into the correct piece. The next thing we've got to cut is our butterfly print, and for the butterfly print I am using a different fabric, of course. I am using this print, and so they wanted you to cut 6 1/2 inch white strips. And then I also made sure when I pressed my fabric, when I starched my fabrics, that I pressed out that center fold. You do want to make sure you get that center fold out of your quilt top, because when you start cutting these pieces, that center fold is not going to be the center of your strip set. So I've cut those already. They're here. The next thing you need to cut from the butterfly print is one strip that's 4 7/8 inches. So from that, you're going to cut 2 4 7/8 inch squares. So I have already done that part off camera. It's just a 4 7/8 inch strip. Then I've cut 2 squares off of that strip. And now what they want you to do is to cut this once diagonally. So I'm just going to put my ruler from corner to corner, and I am going to cut. Now if you've got an eQuilter die cutting system, you could just cut a square that finishes, a half square triangle that finishes at 4 inches. That's exactly what this is. I just opted today not to pull out my eQuilter die cutting system because I'm only going to be cutting 12 pieces in half square triangles. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut those manually since I'm doing this video as well. So that is all that you need for your butterfly print. This is just extra. Now we're to cutting our black solid pieces. And again, when I pressed, I made sure that I pressed out the center fold, and I have all of my strips just open because I don't want to encourage the crease in my fabric. So we can put that there. You need 14 3-inch strips for this project. In addition to that, you're going to need one strip that's cut 4 3/8 inches wide. From that strip, you're going to cut 2 squares that are 4 3/8 inches. In addition to that, from this strip, you're also going to cut 2 3 3/8 inch squares. Okay, so I just cut this off of here, and then I just trimmed off the top once I cut my piece 3 3/8 this way. Once it was off, then I cut the remaining inch off the top. So that's what that is. This is just extra. And with both of these squares, you're now going to cut them both once on the diagonal. And these are just called your large half square triangles and your small half square triangle. So I cut that. Now I've got 4 half square triangles. These finish at 3.5. So if you've got an eQuilter die to finish at 3.5, go for it. This one here will finish at 2 1/2. So if you got a die cutting system that will cut you a finished 2.5 inch half square triangle, you're more than welcome to use that as well. I'm going to just put all of my half square triangles together so that they're in the same place. Next thing with your black fabric is that you're going to need 4 strips 1.5 inches wide. So I have those strips here, and I again have pressed my center pieces out, and it's telling me that I need to cut 2 of these at 40 1/2 inch. So I will do that. And I have all of my right sides up as well. So I'm going to stack these 2 strips. So I'm only using 2 of the 4 at this time. This 2 strips that I have laid here, I'm going to cut at 0, and then I'm going to cut at 40 1/2. And since the camera tripod's in my way, I'm just going to cut the other way. This is a piece of scrap. So that's 2 of my strips cut. And then my next 2 strips, they say to cut at 24 1/2 inches. And I know that's right because this is going to be a frame. And if I start with 22 and add 1 inch on each side, I know that that is 24. So I know that that measurement is correct. Now, my 24 1/2 mark is right here. So I'll go ahead and cut that. And then I'll go down and cut at 0. So now I have my frame ready that goes on my panel. This is just scrap. Last fabric we have to cut, I've already cut. It's 8 strips that are 1.5 inches from your rainbow ombre stripe according to the pattern. And I'm just using this Stonehenge print that I have. So I already have those cut. I have not. I should have opened these up too. I did press the seam out. It just opening up the strips just makes it so that that memory of that fold line that's been put in by the fabric manufacturer isn't memorized. Because when we go to cut these, we don't want that hard strip. We're not going to be cutting in the center where that fold is using it. So we don't want it in the way to be a permanent crease. So I made sure I pressed that out really well. Alright. So we've got other pieces that they say you can cut is 4 strips, 1.5 inches on the black. I'm sorry, 6 strips, 1.5 inches on the black. That's going to be your outside border. I think I want my outside border to be more than 1 inch, so I have not cut that. Also 7 stripes that are 2 1/4 for your binding, and I tend to cut my binding 2 1/2. So I have not cut those pieces because I may want to do something different, put a border. I don't know yet. I want to see what the quilt's telling me when I get there. So now we are to the point where we're going to start piecing the units. However, before we can even piece any units, we've got to do some more cutting. So we already have our strips pressed open, and so they want us to lay 2 strips wrong side up on your cutting mat and 2 strips right side up. So what that's doing is it's going to make a right and a reverse. So when you put strips right sides up, wrong sides down together, then you're basically making a reverse when you're cutting. So that's what they want us to do. So I'm just going to lay my strip sets here, and then we will cut. So I am now on the wrong side. So you want 2 right sides up and 2 wrong sides up. And we have 6 of these strips. So right now we're just using 4. Okay, so there we go. I have my strips. I'm going to pull down just a little bit, and I've got my strips on my line of my mat at this point. So now we're going to use marking tool of your choice. I happen to have a pen right here, so I'm going to use it. And on the pattern instructions, it tells you exactly where you're going to be marking. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the selvage off of my strip. So I'm just using the lines on my mat and my ruler, and I'm just going to cut the selvage off. Now from that point, it tells me to measure down 6.5 inches. So if I'm at 10, I want to go to 16.5. And I want to put a mark. Okay, that's on the bottom. Next, they want me to go from the top 18 3/8 over. So if I'm at 10 and I go to 18, that's going to be 28, and then I want 3/4. So I'm going to use my ruler to make that 3/4 line. And then I'm going to put a mark. And that's why I put my wrong sides up on top, so that I can make these marks and they won't be seen when I go to cut. From this 18 3/8, I now need 18 1/4. Now that's a oddball size to measure out. So I will use my ruler, one of my long rulers, to measure from the cut that I just made I want to measure out 18 1/4. So I've got my edge of my ruler where I've got my mark, and then I want to go down and mark 18 1/4 on my ruler. And I'm a little bit back because I'm doing this for you, but I've just marked down here at 18 1/4 from that mark. Then on the bottom we have some more marks as well. We wanted to do 18 3/8 from that 6 1/2. So right here I'm going to lay this ruler. So I'm putting my ruler down here where you can't see on the 6 1/2 inch mark, but I'm just pulling it back a little bit, and then I'm going to line this up sort of kind of similar. I'm going to go to 18 3/8. So 1 2 3/8 is right here. So I've just marked that one, and then we also need to go 5 1/4 from that measurement. And I like to switch back and forth between my large and small rulers depending on what measurement it is that I need to take. So now we want 5 1/4 from the mark, not the mat, from the mark. So 5 1/4. So we're at 5 1/4 is right here. Make sure you read your ruler correctly. And that's why it's a good thing to mark instead of just out the gate making cuts. Okay. So now we're going to take our rotary cutter and we're going to cut at these marks. So my first mark is 6 1/2 inches to the corner. And that's basically just a 45-degree cut. You're just basically saying you want to cut a 45-degree angle. Trying to move my rulers back here. So I want to make sure that the bottom of my mark, the edge of the fabric, is where I'm lined up to cut, and then into the corner. And I've got 4 layers here, so make sure you have a very sharp blade when you're doing this. So now this is not going to be used in this project, so we're going to put it aside. And now we're going to go down to our next 2 marks. Mark here and the mark here at the top, and we're going to cut this diagonal. So that's why it's important that you starch your fabrics, because you're going to be dealing with the 45-degree angle. This right here is going to be your A pieces. And then when we make this next cut from here to there, these are going to be your B pieces. So we've got our final mark here, up here at the end, and we're going to cut that. I'm cutting right-handed, so it's a little awkward here. And put that back. Let me put it on this side so I can cut it a little bit more. Okay, so I've got a little bit of, I'm going to leave these on here, and these are now my B pieces. Sorry about the camera, guys. Sorry guys, I had to reset my camera, but I had to recut on my left side because I was cutting right-handed. If I was in front of it, it would have worked. This end piece is extra scrap. You're not going to be using that in this project. So again, we've just cut our A pieces and our B pieces. Now let me show you on these A pieces what I mean by reverses. So I've just cut 2 pieces like that, angle, And then the other two angles are in the opposite direction because they were folded 2 right sides up, 2 right sides down. Okay, so that's what I mean by having reverses. So we'll just keep these all together. Again, the longer pieces are your A, the shorter pieces are your B's. It's telling us to go ahead and sew those together, but I am going to go ahead and cut the 2 remaining pieces of the C's. We're going to skip 3 and 4 for right now, just so that we can continue cutting. I like to do as much cutting as I can, and then I can do as much sewing as I can. So let me clean this up a little bit. Now we've got these 2 pieces. Both of these are right sides up. Both of these pieces are right side up. Because remember, we're working with a rectangle, so we're not working with a square here. So now we've got to cut some pieces at different sizes. Okay, so we've got these pieces right side up. And we're going to go ahead and cut off the selvage down here on the end. I'm again at 10, so that will work. Just to get rid of the selvage. And now I'm going to start doing those measurements again. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my largest ruler because I know I'm going to be coming up on some of that soon here. So first measurement down here, 6.5 again. We're just basically cutting for that 45-degree angle. And this pen is a little difficult for me to show in the camera, so I'm going to go get a white marking pen. I'll be right back. So I'm back and I have my white marking pen, and that's because these pieces are right side up, and I don't want to put too much heavy of an ink or marker that's going to bleed through to the front. So I've got my 6.5 marked. Then they tell me from that point to go to 10 7/8. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to use my long ruler. Just lay it up here, center of that line I just made. 10 7/8. It's right here. So that's 10 7/8. So from this mark here, we now want to mark 23 7/8. And I hope it doesn't get blurry for you guys when I lean in here. And again, you wouldn't be leaning in to do yours. I'm just doing this so that I don't have to keep going around my camera tripod. So I've got that marked. Now we're back up to the top here. From the corner, they want us to measure 23 7/8. And this is a 24-inch ruler. So 23 7/8 is right here. And then from that mark, I want to move down 10 7/8. So I'm going to put it at the mark, 10 7/8. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 7/8 is right here. So hopefully you've seen that. So 10 7/8. Okay, so now that I've got my marks, I'm ready to cut. From the corner here, I want to cut from the corner to my 6.5-inch mark. So I'm going to make sure I'm at 6.5, and I'm also on the corner. You want to cut. And it's a good idea to cut. And again, this is going to be excess. We're not using it in this project. And what we're actually cutting are going to be 2 C's. So now we want to cut from our 23 mark, 23 7/8 mark here, down to this 10 7/8 mark. So that's our next one. Line that up. And we're going to cut. We got one more cut. We have A's and B's here. And now we're cutting C's. So that's one set. And then I've got to make the final cut. Let me turn this down. I've got the final cut here to make from here to the mark there. And I can pull this down because I have already marked this. So it's not like I have to leave it in that position. My fabrics have already been marked. They're lined up. They were. Let me make sure. Make sure everything's lined up exact. And now I am going to cut from my 10 3/8 mark to the 23 7/8 mark. And the pattern shows very good illustrations of this. I'm just doing this so that new quilters can see that it's not so scary to cut this quilt out. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and stack these. These are my C's, and I'm going to put them on the bottom of my stack. So I now have my A, my B's, and my C's. Everything is cut. For right now, I can start doing some sewing. So that's what we're going to do next. So the first step that they're telling us is that they want us to take our B triangles and add a large black half square triangle to the top. So that's what we're going to do. So we have two sets of triangles. We have our small black and our large. We're going to use the large. And we're going to take all four of these B's and we're going to put a half square triangle on top. Sew that down. And if you need to, you can do a fold where you fold your bottom piece like so that your wrong side is out. And then if I fold this one where my right side is out, when I go to put these together, right sides together to sew, we'll have a little fold mark. That starch really helps you to show the fold mark. And then you can go ahead and stitch 1/4 of an inch seam. Do not stretch, just let your feed dogs just guide it through. So I will go do that and I will come right back. So here I have my B triangles where I have pressed toward the background fabric, your black, whatever color you're using. In this case, you could press 2 of them towards the black and 2 of them down. I did not do that. I just opted to go ahead and press both of them in the same direction. And then the next thing you want to do is you do want to get rid of these dog ears. I just think it makes the blocks lay flatter, not having the excess pieces there. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim those dog ears. And so I have already done that to 2 of these. So that's why you're only seeing 2 here. Okay, so my dog ears are now off of my triangles. And then the next step you want to do is you want to combine these 2 triangles together into a larger triangle. And what you want to do is make sure that your black or your background piece is touching. You want to make sure that you're making a larger triangle. You don't want to turn it and sew it a different way like this. You will not end up with a half square triangle. So make sure that your black pieces match when you sew these together. So when I sew these together, if your seams are butting, you just make sure that you line them up. Mine are both going the same direction. I still make sure that they're lined up, and then I place a pin in the selvage to hold that. So as I'm sewing down this section will not move. Once I've sewn that, I press my seam open just so that this area will lay a little flatter here. And then you also want to trim these dog ears as well. Just think it makes the block looks neater. Okay. It wants to stay. Alright, so there are your dog ears trimmed, and you want to make 2 like this from your 4 B blocks. So I will do that and show that to you. Oh, I have it ready. I'll just do that, but we're going to go ahead and move on to the next segment. So I'm back, and I just want to show you what I have laid out here. These are full strip sets. You can't see the whole thing because of the camera angle. However, we're going to start sewing our grunge. I'm using grunge. You'll be using a different fabric, but I'm going to sew a grunge strip in between 2 of my black strips. I'm going to do that and make a strip set with these 3 fabrics. I am going to press my seams toward the black here, and then I'm going to make 6 of these. We need 6 strip sets with the 3 pieces, and then with our final pieces we're going to have left over, we're going to sew 1 of my Stonehenge. I said grunge, this is Stonehenge, I'm sorry. We're going to sew 1 of the Stonehenge to 1 black strip, and we're going to do this step twice. So 6 of these where I have 3, 2 of these where I have the 2 pieces of fabric. So I'm going to go do a lot of sewing of these strip sets, press everything towards my black fabric, and I'll be back. I am back with my strip sets, and I have my 6 sets that are with 3 pieces and 2 sets that are with 2 pieces. And we're going to take these and set these sets aside. We're going to cut those later. Right now we're going to take 2 strip sets and we're going to lay them wrong sides together, which is what the instructions say. So we're going to move those out. So if wrong sides are together, it's the same thing as having right sides together. So we can do that just so we don't confuse people. So we're going to put wrong sides together. Just trying to get them pulled out first. And then I'm going to pick a line on the mat, my cutting mat, and then I'm going to align them to that line. Okay. So I'm going to cut at 10 down here. They want me to cut a 35 7/8 inch strip set. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm at 10, and then I'm going to cut at 45 7/8. So I'm going to go around the tripod again. .45 and 7/8, and that'll give me a 35 7/8 inch strip. And then we have these pieces left over. Then the next step, they want you to go from the bottom corner up 6.5 inches. So I'm just going to use my mat. I better go ahead and use my ruler. I will put a mark here so we can see it on camera. So I'm at 10. I want to be at 16.5. Put a little mark. And then on the other end, I want to do the exact same thing, 6.5 inches. You could turn your strip set if that's easier for you. I'm just going to mark it here. Okay, and then we're going to go from the corner to the mark that we just made. So again, we just have extra pieces here, and then we're going to do the same down here. We're going to go from corner to corner and cut. And they want us, I lost camera battery, so I've just cut 2 of my 6 strip sets. So 2 strips cut, and they want me to repeat that process on another set of strips. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so now we have 4 pieces. We have 4 pieces like this. And then we have 2 more. Let's see. Those pieces that we just cut are your E pieces, and now we're going to cut D pieces. Again, they want wrong sides together. I don't think it really matters with this. I think they're just trying to nest the seams, but we're going to do what they say to be sure. We've got 10 inches. We're going to line up on my left, and now we're going to, I just want to trim off my selvage so we can start marking. And now we want to trim 6.5 on the bottom, 6.5 on the bottom, and then we want to skip 5 7/8 inches. So that little mark right here. And then we want to skip 18 7/8 of an inch, which I need to switch rulers. So from that mark, 18 7/8. So the instructions for this part is very well written. 18 7/8. And on the top, we want to go from the edge, 18 7/8. Right there. And then we want to now move down 5 7/8 from that point. 5 7/8. It's right there. Okay, so now we're ready to cut those pieces. So my mark is here, and I'm left-handed, so I'm going to put it here. And these are going to be D pieces. Okay. Now we're going to cut from this mark to that mark. Marks right along the edge of those fabrics. Okay, so that's 2. And then we've got 1 more to make here to there, and I'm just going to slide this down. Maybe even turn it just so it's easier for me to cut. So from the edge to the edge and cut. Now this piece here is extra. We're not going to be using it. So we've got a lot of extra trimmings that I will just incorporate into my strings and crumbs. And I have these 4 units here that I will be using. And again, these are my D units. So our next step, we're going to number 9 in the pattern. So we've got these units here, and we want to make 4 of them where we're using this large half square triangle. So we're going to go ahead and sew these units together here. Again, I showed you how to fold and make sure everything is centered when you do that. So I'll go sew those and I'll be right back. I'm back and I have my D triangles that I just sewed my half square triangle onto the top point, and now I have my A and my A reverse. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to sew all 4 of these pieces together, and we're going to do that twice. So I will start by sewing these 2 units together, and then I will sew these 2 units together, and then I will have 2 sets of triangles here, and then I'm going to sew them down the middles, and I'm going to do that twice, so you'll end up with 2 sets. So I just wanted to kind of skip one of the sewing steps since I'm starting and stopping the video. But basically I am going to line up with the corner tips here, and then we are going to sew. You should have your seam allowance left at the end here. Your 1/4 inch should end right where these 2 meet. Okay, so I'm going to go do that for both of these sets, and then I'm going to sew the center seams. Okay, I'm back with my 2 units here, and I have sewn them diagonally and then sewn the center seam. So I now have 2 corners like this. So we're going to put this aside for just a second, and we're going to go to the last 2 strip sets that we have. On these, we are going to cut these 2 strip sets are going to be cut into 11 7/8 of an inch. So I have them already lined up, ready to go. I have my line down here at 10. So I'm going to go to 21 7/8, and then I'm going to just move the strip down and use the same lines. So that's 1 cut. For 2, since I'm on an odd number, I'm just going to slide down, put that on 10, and now I'm cutting back again at 21 7/8. And that will be my 11 7/8. And they said I need 4. So again, this is extra. I could have cut 3 out of 1 maybe, and then I would have had a longer strip set, but that's okay. So now that I've got these pieces, you want to make sure that your points are up. I'm going to put this on 18. And we now want to mark 4 inches in from each corner. So here's 1 4-inch mark. And then if I move this down, 1 2 3 4. There's my last 4-inch mark. And all of these are going to be right side up. So what I'm going to do is just stack all 4 of these and cut them at the same time. So we are now going to cut from the mark to the corner. Right there. It is quite a few seam allowances. They only recommend you cut through 2, but I'm just getting it done. Okay. So on top of this unit, which is your unit F, we're now going to sew the small black triangles onto the top of this set. So that's one thing that we're going to sew. I'm going to go ahead and show you next what we're going to sew. So while we're also sewing, I want to go ahead and show you our next sewing step. We have 4 units like this, and while I'm at the sewing machine, I'm going to go ahead and sew these on top of here like so, and then I will come back. So I'm going to show you this set as well as this when I come back. I've returned, done some more sewing, and so I have sewn all 4 units where I put the small black triangle on top of this unit. And then I have on this larger unit put my print on top here. So if we were looking at the photo here, we're down to step number, this is step number 13, and then step number 14 is when we put all of these units together. And I just wanted to reiterate, I have been sewing, pressing all of my bottom pieces with wrong sides together, and my top pieces I've been pressing my bottom pieces where the wrong sides are out, I'm sorry, and then on the top pressing where my right sides are out. And then when I open that up and sew that together, I've got a little fold where they just lay nested and everything just lays, and then I just sew my 1/4 inch seam. So I've been doing that this whole time. I've been sewing these units together like that. So in order to just skip some time on camera, I have gone ahead and done that to the remaining 3 pieces here, just so we can skip a few steps here. So we've got quite a few units sewed together now. We've got this unit, and then we also have 2 of this unit. So we'll have 4 of this bottom, 2 of this one, and then we also have 2 of this unit. Okay, so that's what we have sewn together as far as triangle segments. Okay, so we're going to put all of this to the side, and now it's actually time to start piecing our panel together. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what we're going to do here, and then I'm going to come back with it ready to go. So this is my panel long ways on my cutting mat, and what we're going to do is take those 40 and a half by 1.5 inch strips. We're going to put 1 strip on each side. So these long strips are going to go on the side, and then the 1.5 by 24.5 is going to go on the top and bottom. So I just wanted to show you that. And when this strip is longer than it is needed right now, but once I sew these on the side, these right here will fit perfect. So I'm going to go sew this unit together, and then we'll come back. So we are back with my panel, and I have sewn my borders on sides first and then top and bottom. Now my panel is 42.5 inches from edge to edge by 24.5 inches. So that's what we're working with now. And I just wanted to come back and show you that the last page of the instructions, they have a visual of how you actually put the entire quilt together, as well as step-by-step instructions on how to construct the quilt top. So I have my panel underneath. The first things that we're going to sew on are our side pieces, and that's the unit that looks like this. It should be your longest seam that you have to sew together. So that's our first step. I have a center mark here already, and so what I'm going to do is turn my panel, and I just fold it in half, and I just make a little center mark for that. So that way I know that my piece is centered as I work my way out. So this is going to go right sides together. The same line that I have here, I'm going to put on that crease mark that I just made. And I have one pin here. I will just put this pin in to hold the center. Then I would lay out from center to one side, lay my piece out, and then I would pin down toward the end here, and then I will continue to fill in pins. I might put a pin here, and then 2 more pins in between those pins. And then I will do the same thing on the other side, and I'm also checking to make sure that this fits. And so I want to make sure I have that 1/4 inch hang off on the end. So that's what I'm going to do with both of these panels onto the long side, and I'll be back. So we are now back, have pieces sewn onto both sides of my quilt top. And as we're sewing these together, please be aware that these are bias edges out here. So please be gentle, don't do a whole lot of tugging. I've actually, when I press, I've been pressing with my steam press. And so if you're pressing with an iron, make sure that you lift and place your iron and not just run it over, because you see how this is still nice and smooth and flat? That's because I'm not tugging on it. And when I'm picking up my quilt, I'm making sure that I get in the middle. And now our next step is we want to put our triangle pieces on top and bottom. What pieces are those? It's the 2 units that look like this. So I'll move one out, but we now want to put this on the top and bottom of our piece. So that's what we have so far. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this in half so I can get my center. I do want to show you one time, at least me pinning one of these triangles just so you can see it. So here you see where I have folded with my wrong sides are out, and I fold. And that doesn't matter this time because I actually have a piece line here that I can match up to that. But if I didn't have a piece line, then I would have made sure to fold where my right sides were out on the second piece. So we're going to go ahead and pin this. And then we'll do one side. Make sure everything is nice and flat. Place a pin here. And then I will also put a pin in the middle. And because all of these are bias edges, I'm pinning because I don't want anything to stretch. And I want to keep my top nice and flat. And I just don't have enough room here, so I'm going to fold it back. And then one last pin here. And then I repeat that process to put the triangle on the other edge. And this is one of those panels that there really isn't a top and bottom. I'm just saying top and bottom as I'm piecing just to make it easier, but there really isn't a top and bottom, and I haven't at this point decided what's my top or bottom. So I'm gonna work it until I get to the end when it comes time to doing my label, and then I'll make a decision. So I'm gonna go ahead and pin this. As you can see, I don't have a whole lot of room here, especially with the tripod. So I will see you after this is sewn. So we're back, and we now have the top and bottom triangle sewed onto our panel. And now you can see that it is this weird shape here because it's kind of like something that's almost on point. And so those last 4 triangles that we have are going to go on each edge. So that's what we're going to do next. It is getting late, and I have no way of showing you this entire panel here tonight. So what I'm going to do is I'll continue to sew this tonight, and then when if weather permitting, I don't know if it's going to rain tomorrow, then I will show you this tomorrow out on my deck. So let me get one of these corners for you so you can see how this is going to fit. So this is where the triangle is going onto these corners. This is going to be like a top left corner, or whatever corner you want it to be based on how you turn your panel. So I just wanted to show you that. And the instructions has very good pressing information, and I've been just following what they say as far as pressing, and everything's been working out well. The only thing is that I've been trimming my dog ears so that I don't have excess bulk underneath my seams. So I'm going to go ahead and do my same technique to put these 4 corners on, and then I'll come back tomorrow and meet you outside where you can see the whole entire quilt top, because I think that's the best way to see it. So I'm back. It's the next day, and I know I promised that I would take you outside and show you my top, but we need to also add a final border, and I don't want to hang this because of all the bias edges on the outside. So that's why I'm not showing it to you at this time on my deck. I'm going to go ahead and add my finished strips for my border. And I have laid out here a strip that's 1.5 inch cut for a 1 inch finish, which would finish like this here on the inside. And I've also laid out a strip that's cut 3 inches, right here, that would finish at 2.5. And I do agree that the 1 inch finish is better, so I'm going to go ahead and start cutting my remaining strips that I didn't cut before I started this pattern. I think the same size as the main sashing going through diagonally is just too much for this quilt. I think the sashing border takes over instead of enhancing. So I'm not going to put this on. I am going to go ahead and cut my strips. I measured my quilt top, and it measures exactly what the pattern says at 49.5 inches wide by 66.5 inches in length. So everything is spot on, so you can cut your borders according to the pattern. This pattern is very well executed, and the instructions are amazing. Next thing I want to talk about is the leftovers. There are a lot of leftovers with this, and I haven't even gotten to adding my final border on yet, but I am going to incorporate these strips into my final border as well. So I'm going to put that up there so I don't forget. So I just want to show you all of the leftovers from cutting this quilt top. I do love this quilt top, but I just want to show you the leftovers, and so I'm going to have to figure out some way of incorporating these either into string quilts or a small little project that's just a random modern type quilt or something. So I've got lots of these, so 4 of these units here, and then 4 of these units there. And then I haven't separated these units out yet to see what's the difference here. So I've got quite a bit of these as well. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got a total of 10 of these units here when you sort them out, because I cut them in pairs. I've got 4 units like this, and I have 2 units like this. So those are, and then also I have this piece here from when I cut the squares to make half square triangles. And then on this piece I have these triangle cut-offs from when I was cutting my side units here. This is the piece left over from cutting the half square triangles I was going to need. And then these are also pieces that were cut from making my triangle units. So you do have quite a bit of waste, so I'm going to have to figure out, like, some of this waste I could put back just into my scrap bin and not even cut at all because they're nice large pieces, so I do like that. But where they're a strip piece, I may have to just put those into my strings and crumbs, which I think will be nice little accents in a quilt like that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my strips. Let me tell you how many I have to cut since I didn't cut them in the first place. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my strips. I didn't cut the 6 strips that were 1.5 inches in length. So I'm going to calculate from my measurements, which are accurate with the pattern, and see how many strips do I need if I'm incorporating those pieces as well. So I'll see you outside on my deck when I'm done. Alright, so this is the end of this sewing project. I did go ahead and add my borders. I just wanted to come back and give you all a final look at my project. Also, let me know what you think about putting the light print up in the top right. I think it looks like the sun coming into a scene. Or this panel can be reversed the other way. If you think it would look better upside down, then let me know that as well. I haven't decided yet what's the top or bottom until I put the label on the quilt. So hopefully this will help you decide what to do with some panel quilts. Again, the link for this pattern I will put down in the description box. So thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Share my channel with your other quilting friends, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye, Teaquilters. Stay blessed.